Coming up in today's vlog, I want to show you how I installed this brown wig. So stick around. So while I install this wig, I'll do a quick story time about the time that I had an encounter with the death angel. Well, I've had several encounters where I've met the death angel face to face. So the story goes back to October of 2004, and I was pregnant with my second son, and I was 6 months pregnant, and his name was Marcus. And at 6 months, I was telling my husband at the time that I just didn't feel right. Something was not feeling right with inside of me. And he was like, "No, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine." Well, as soon as we left church, I stepped foot on to my porch and my water broke. So immediately, being that I was 6 months and my water breaking, I knew, just being a nurse, that this is not good. So we called my obstetrician, we called the doctor, and I told him my water broke. And he didn't believe me because, he had already delivered my first son, Zachariah. Anyway, he said, "Go to the hospital, meet me there, and they can run a kit on the fluid that is draining to tell you if your water has indeed broken." So I get over to Palms West Hospital. They run the kit, and it tests positive for amniotic fluid. So they send me now, because now I became just that quick a high-risk pregnancy. So from Palms West Hospital, they send me to, what's that? Good Samaritan Hospital? One of those major trauma hospitals in West Palm Beach. And so I was there in the hospital in West Palm Beach for months. Well, not months, but it felt like months. But I was there for weeks, for some weeks. It was a long time. So the reason they sent me to this trauma hospital is because they were going to put me on bed rest, in which they did in the hospital. And they were giving me steroids daily and checking the baby every couple of hours to see how the baby was doing. And the reason for this is they was trying to get me to make 7 months or 7.5 months and stop draining fluid while they mature the baby's lungs. The thing is that the whole time that I was in the hospital, I would feel this presence of the death angel. At first, I could just feel the presence. I actually thought the death angel was there for me. So I didn't say anything to anybody, but I began to just really pray internally and worship. They allowed me to bring, my radio and different things because I was going to be there for a while. Well, after a while of just feeling the presence of the death angel, there would be moments where I would not feel the presence. It would be like it left the room. And every time that happened in the hospital, over the loudspeaker, they would call a code blue. So what I think was happening was that the death angel was walking through the hospital, checking on the people that had an appointment with him. And he would leave the room and go at the appointed time to take the people whose time it was to leave this earth. Anyway, he would come back after they would have a code blue or sometimes I would go hours and not feel his presence. Then, after being in hospital about 2 weeks, at night, I began to see this shadow, not feel his presence in the room because I was doing a lot of praying, but I would see the shadow standing on the ledge outside of the window of the hospital room. And I was in a private room by myself. But this shadow would stand on the ledge, and I could just feel the presence of this shadow. It had a figure, not a humanly figure, but it was like a figure. And it stood on that ledge nightly. And I got the intuitive feeling that it was at least 8 to 10 feet tall. And it wasn't doing anything to me. I didn't feel fear. I just felt its presence. And then the longer I stayed in the hospital, the presence began to manifest until I could see it visually. So one night I was looking at it out the window, and I was just laying there, and I fell asleep. And, they had me connected to all of these monitors on my abdomen because they were monitoring the baby's heart rate to see if it dropped and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, I'm still thinking the death angel's coming for me. I'm not afraid because, I was in ministry. I was a pastor. I just felt like, okay, I'm not going to say anything to anybody because I don't want anybody to panic. So I fell asleep, and then the death angel came into the room. And while I was asleep, I stopped breathing. And I immediately became aware that I was not breathing. My eyes was closed, but my eyes was also open, if I can say that. Let me put it in perspective. So my eyes was closed. I knew that I was asleep, but my spiritual eyes was open, so I could see everything happening in the room. And I knew, and they had a nurse that was stationed by my room because this is how high risk of an emergency it was. But she had went to the nurse's station. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. I stopped breathing. I was like, okay, it's my time now because I can't even call for help. This death angel had come into the room. His shadow took over the room, and it jumped. I felt when his energy jumped onto my chest. It was preventing me from taking another breath, and I just wasn't breathing. My heart was still pumping, but I wasn't breathing. I start hearing the monitors and everything go off in the room, and I started praying and just, internally in my mind, calling on the name of Jesus for help and for assistance. But it wasn't a panic. It was just like, okay, Jesus, come here with me. Manifest yourself. Make your presence known. Come and assist me. Because at that point, I was okay with whatever was going to happen, right? So as I began to pray within my mind because I couldn't speak, all of a sudden, I see nurses and everybody running to the room. So although the nurse wasn't stationed at the little desk outside of my door, because I was connected to the monitors, the nurses, they didn't know I stopped breathing, but what they did see was that the baby's heart had declined on a monitor at the desk. And it was declining rapidly as if the baby was dying inside of me. So they came rushing in the room, and when they came rushing in the room, and I was like, and my head was already elevated, and I was like, okay, Jesus, I'm praying, my eyes is closed, but I can see everything that's going on. And when they came rushing in the room, and while I'm praying internally, the death angel jumped off my chest, and the baby's heart rate went back to normal. And they woke me up, and they was like, wow, we're in here because your baby, his heart had stopped, but it started back beating on his own just now. So they was like, you got to make sure when you fall asleep that these monitors don't slide off your stomach. So they thought that the monitors had moved and all of that stuff, but they didn't know the spiritual experience I had just had with the death angel. So he left my room, and while they were adjusting and hit the baby monitors on my abdomen, I heard them call a code blue somewhere else. So I feel like while I was thinking it was me, the whole time the death angel was there for the baby that I was pregnant with. But I was thinking it was me that he was after. But because I was a praying mom and because I was fighting it, he couldn't take the baby. So eventually they came because I had been draining fluid so much and there was not enough fluid around the baby. And because his heart rate kept dropping, because this was happening every night, they decided to do an emergency C-section. And so I hadn't seen after that day the death angel nor felt his presence. So it's like he had left me alone. So I thought I was in the clear. When they came to do the emergency C-section and they took the baby out, they brought Marcus to me, and I just knew. I told the anesthesiologist, I was like, I can't breathe, I'm gonna die. He's like, no, you're not gonna die. The epidural does that to everybody. I was like, no, I'm gonna die. Feel the death angel. Can you turn my oxygen up? And he wouldn't. And so I started to panic. My eyes went big. And so just to calm me down, he put my oxygen on 4 liters from 2. And when he put my oxygen on, they went ahead, delivered the baby, brought the baby over to me. He was a preemie, and showed me the baby. They didn't even let me hold Marcus. They showed me Marcus. But on the way, the nurse was walking out the room with Marcus, I looked over at him, and he waved goodbye. A newborn baby waved goodbye to me. As Marcus left the room, I no longer felt the spirit of death. So I pushed it aside. I went to, they rolled me into the recovery room in the hospital, and they put me on the med-surg floor. So I was no longer in ICU. I was now on a regular floor. So they brought the baby into me. They was like, okay, we're going to bring Marcus. I was like, yeah. So they bring Marcus. Nobody told me that he died. It was like 10 people came. They came with the priest. They came with several of the doctors that was there, the anesthesiologists, just everybody, people from other floors, because I was in the hospital a long time, and a bunch of nurses. And they came with the baby, cuddled, wrapped, dressed as if he had survived. And they brought him to me, and they gave me a dead baby. And then after they gave him to me, they said he didn't make it. I'm like, what? They couldn't have told me this before they brought this dead baby inside the room. So they's like, you want to hold him? I say, no, just bring him close. Because I wanted to verify that he was indeed gone. And the whole time I was there in ICU, the doctors was telling me that even if the baby make it, he's going to have a mental retardation. And I had told God, God, I'm okay with that. I can handle it. Don't take my baby. So anyway, I was 25 at the time. God took Marcus home. And I ended up having, at 25, to plan a funeral, buy a gravesite, buy a headstone, all of this stuff. Meanwhile, I'm grieving the loss of my baby. There's one thing for sure, though, that after Marcus died, I didn't see or hear from the death angel again. The next time that I met with the death angel was when I first moved to Fort Myers, and he would hover over my house. And at one morning I was leaving out to work, and I heard the Spirit of God say, this is going to be the last time you drive this car. And I was excited because I was thinking in my mind, I had just lost everything. God is going to bless me with a new car. I didn't know that the reason God said this is the last time you're going to drive this car was because that same day I would be in a car accident, June 10th. I think 2010 or June 6th, somewhere up in there. A lady ran a red light. I tried to avoid hitting her, and my car flipped 5 or 6 times. I was knocked out for 25 minutes. So the death angel, when he was hovering over my house and standing in my closet, that time he was coming to get me. But it wasn't my time, and God spared me. So fast forward now, we're in 2023. I remember making God a promise when I was in ICU that I can handle a special needs child. I had Caleb after Marcus died. I had him about 2 years later. And I didn't know at the time that Caleb had autism. But anyway, it's 16 years later, and I have another special needs child. And his name is Caleb, and he's autistic. And I feel like God is saying, okay, because when Caleb was born, I really felt like it was Marcus, my baby that died, reincarnated. As a matter of fact, for about 6 months, I was calling Caleb Marcus because I was like, wow, this just feels like the energy of the baby I was pregnant with that passed. Anyway, I'm here now, and I'm honoring my promise because God did give me a special needs child, and we're 16 years later, and that's that. But long story short, the second visit I had with the death angel, I had the rollover car accident. I survived it. An angel pulled me out. And thank you for listening to my story.